This guy Mk.gee, or Mk.gee, I'm pretty sure you can pronounce it either way. I was wrong. It's pronounced Mk.gee. Sorry. His tone, I would venture to say his tone is probably the most chased after guitar sound in like the last 5 years, and he really only blew up like 6 months ago. So I'm gonna try and make the Mk.gee sound at 3 different levels. Completely free, using only stock plugins and free plugins. A mid-tier price point using paid plugins and whatever guitar pedals that I have lying around. And then his exact tone by taking some very key components from his sound and then putting them into my rig. That includes like a signature tape deck and this guitar pedal, which I think is probably the hardest commodity to find in music right now. There were 2 available on the internet. So let's go over his formula first. Mk.gee's tone is comprised of the following elements. We have a Fender 60s reissue Jaguar tuned to a baritone tuning. If you don't have a baritone guitar, get some thick strings and just tune it down to A standard. It's gonna be kind of tough though. He's then going into a Ranger FX Reverb X pedal, into a Chase Bliss Mood, a Catalan Bred Bell Epoch, that's a tape echo, Boss BF2 flanger, and then an Electro Harmonics debugger. Now all of that is then being sent to a Tascam 424. That is an old Porta-Studio cassette recording deck. I'm gonna chime in from the future here because I did a bit more research. This information was taken from the only current interview about his gear on YouTube, but that was almost a year ago at this point, and 3 months ago this picture was taken of his pedal board. I'll outline all the gear on this current pedal board. But that's why the next thing that Past Me is about to say is so important. Out of all of this gear, there are 2 main elements. The Ranger FX Reverb and that Tascam 424, which is why you can't find that pedal anywhere, and the Tascams have just shot up in value this year. Let's actually talk about the Tascam first. The fader is cranked all the way to 10 to take advantage of the distortion that you get whenever you dime the preamp.
So you can start to kind of hear what I'm talking about. If I play lightly, I get this sort of 80s high headroom sort of thing. But then when I dig in,
this effect rewards highly dynamic playing. Whenever you're playing softly, it's kind of a sweet, clean tone. And then whenever you pluck the string really hard, it distorts and overloads the preamp. When you put the Ranger pedal into this equation, it sends it to a whole nother level. The Ranger is a gated reverb with a twist. It has a distortion knob. So that means that the guitar actually isn't really that reverby of a signal before it reaches a certain volume threshold. When the guitar reaches a certain volume level, not only does the reverb kick in, but it starts to distort and glitch out as well.
Play like Sweet Thing, and then lean into the Ranger.
This is kind of the Ranger sound.
This is yet another element that rewards dynamic playing. When you combine these 2 elements, the Ranger pedal and the Tascam reverb, we kind of get 2 different guitar signals in one. A soft, sweet sound whenever we play lightly, and a monstrous, glitchy, aggressive sound whenever we play hard. So that's the formula that we're going to try and chase, and we don't necessarily need these exact pieces of gear in order to do that. The question is, how close can we get? So if you're a brand new player and you don't have any sort of gear, you just have a guitar and an audio interface, this is your stop. Okay, so your boy is just too scared to plug merch in the moment. But if you wanted to get a beanie for the fall, or you wanted to support the channel with a t-shirt, they're nice t-shirts. Yeah. First, I'm going to tune down to C standard. That allows me to play Are You Looking Up? If you want to play songs like Candy or some of the other tracks, you are going to need to go down all the way to drop A. You'll need 2 different free plugins for this version. You'll need Analog Obsession's Brit Pre and Calum Audio's Tape Cassette 2. We'll use both of these in tandem to achieve that cranked preamp sound. I'm going to use Ableton's pedal on a mellow overdrive preset, Ableton's stock chorus. I didn't really like Ableton's flanger, but maybe your software has a better flanger. The Brit Pre is completely cranked, making as much distortion out of that preamp emulation as we can. After some small EQing, a bit of further saturation using the saturator plugin, a glue compressor, and then some tube emulation, we're getting kind of in the ballpark. We're gonna add the tape cassette 2 at the very end of the signal to get that saturated tape sound to finish off the main part of this tone. But we're missing the reverb. We're gonna make a return channel and put a gate on it. After that gate, we'll use a darker plate reverb that doesn't have too long of a decay, and then a saturator on it to distort the reverb signal as well. So I think it's important to point out that the Mk.gee sound isn't really just one sound. I feel like a lot of people talk about it like it's just one sound, but the live version of Are You Looking Up, for example, is a really dry tone. But then you go to Candy and it's really reverbed out and it almost sounds synth-like. So to accomplish the kind of Candy verse tone, I ended up putting Ableton's flanger, even though I said I didn't really like Ableton's flanger, as well as an additional reverb onto the free chain to get it a bit more spacious and spacey. We're gonna set that gate to live right on the very tip of the audio. This means when we play really loud, it'll cross that threshold. We're effectively making a gated reverb, but when we play softly, we're not gonna have any reverb on the signal. Now you can use your volume knob and your preamp knob on your interface in order to control the amount of saturation going into all of these different distortion emulators. What I would do is use the audio interface to push the signal to as much saturation as you're ever gonna get. Then use the volume knob on your guitar to clean it up later. When you're ready to launch into a solo, maybe like on the Candy solo, bring that volume knob all the way up to full power. And if you actually want to download this free chain, if you're an Ableton user, it's on Patreon. You also get all of the mixing tutorials for every breakdown on this channel, and for $3 more, you can get the mix stems to all those breakdowns as well. Okay, so the mid-tier sound. I want to give a quick shout out to Lova Lamp, or just Lava Lamp, I'm not sure the channel name. His work is the basis for my mid-tier sound. Bro, if you start uploading regularly, you got a great presentation style, so consider this an invitation to join the YouTube club. So if you're at the stage of your gear journey where you have a handful of overdrive or fuzz pedals, some modulation pedals, but you don't have really fancy recording equipment, this is your stop. For all the plugins that I was using as a pedal board, I replaced them with this and this. The Pet Yeti is a monster of a pedal that's developed by an indie pedal company named Cosmodio Instruments. I would love if you support them because check this out. We're going to use this as our primary overdrive sound, and I'm going to use my Somersault Lo-Fi modulator to make our chorus sound. We're going to keep the Brit Pre in this version, keep it all the way cranked like before, but then we're actually going to sub in Slate's New York Saturator and their LA2A emulation. Use the RC20 to push a little bit more distortion as well as a bit of a wobble. This is going to give us enough power and saturation to run straight into Universal Audio's Studer tape emulation. In this scenario, that is our Tascam sound. We're going to replace Ableton's Dark Plate emulation with a plate emulation by Universal Audio and a Kilohertz overdrive rather than Ableton's Saturator. Once again, we get our power by crushing the preamps and then dialing it back to a clean taste with our volume knob on the guitar. So for this tone and the high tier tone that's coming next, I found that if you just use a flanger emulation and drench it in reverb, it gets you pretty close to the live sound. So let's run this solo back with those effects on. So this little pedal has got to be one of the hardest to get commodities in the guitar world this year. I found 2 of them on Reverb. They were the only ones on the internet, and I paid more than the MSRP for a used pedal. And this is a Tascam 414. Mk.gee uses a 424, but these are a little bit cheaper. They're much easier to find. And as far as I understand, the preamps are the exact same. So just a little tip, if you're trying to get that tone, they're still not cheap. I think like 9 Inch Nails uses them, so they're still expensive. So let's dime that preamp and then dial in the tone somewhere between line and mic. The more you get towards mic, the more saturated the tone will be. It'll be a little bit more like the live version of like Candy, something like that. And here's the setting that I ended up with on the Ranger. You can drive the input and the distortion knobs to get a closer tone to, again, the live versions. I'm still using the somersault as our chorus flanger sort of thing, but a more intense flanger, maybe the boss flanger, is going to get you a little bit closer to the vibe of like Candy from the live versions again. Now this isn't really a Mk.gee thing, but it's a really cool tone. Check out what happens if you have a dimed preamp and then you just overload it with a bunch of distortion. Let's hear all three of these tones back to back to back. So the goal here was to outline kind of 3 different points of like complexity when it comes to studio gear. You definitely fall somewhere in between these 3 points, and you can kind of connect the dots to get a Mk.gee like tone using whatever you have available to you. So these videos take a ton of time. If this was helpful to you, if you liked it, it would mean a lot if you liked, subscribed, shared, all the things that YouTube loves to do to help these videos do well. And let me know if you want to do a full sound-like recreation of Mk.gee. It seems like a lot of the dialogue online was specifically about his guitar tone, so I figured I would touch on that first and then feel out the waters to figure out if people want a full recreation. But if they do, let me know down below. And remember, you can download the free chain on Patreon if you'd like to. I'll see you later. Bye-bye.